at the point right now. Oh, I'll start from the I got the recording. Thanks everyone for coming to this workshop, how to negotiate your funding offers and off wait lists. And I was curious how many of you here are at the point where you are getting acceptances, if you're more at the end of it, and how many of you were sort of at the beginning of this process and thinking about schools. Actually, the schools that you decide to apply to can make a big difference in how much funding that you get at the end of this journey where you're getting your acceptances. So I'm just curious, you're welcome to put that into the chat if some of you are at the beginning of this journey or really nearing the end and making decisions this spring. But today I'm going to talk about negotiation. This is really fun because a lot of people don't even realize that they can negotiate with graduate schools, including the graduate schools that are part of the PPIA Partners Program. And also you can even negotiate in some cases off of wait lists, which is that conditional acceptance that depends on you getting a spot after their first round applicants have been accepted or made their decisions. Now, I want to encourage you guys to take some notes because when we get further into this workshop, it's going to get a little more in depth. So if you haven't, if you're on a desktop, you can open up a Google Doc. If you have a notebook or like to write by hand, do that. But I'm going to have some great tactical points for you today on how you can take this information and literally go to your graduate schools today or Monday and start negotiating your funding offers. Now, my full name is Dr. Vicki Johnson. Feel free to call me Vicki. Esteban gave me an amazing intro, so you know a little bit about me. ProFellow is an enterprise that's been around since 2011. And if you've never used the ProFellow website, I'll give you a quick overview. At the site, you can sign up for a free account and access our database. Our database is the bread and butter of what we do. At this database, we list master's fellowships, doctoral fellowships, summer fellowships, professional fellowships, which you can do before or after your graduate school experience. We also list fully funded PhD programs and fully funded master's programs. So these are programs that offer funding at acceptance. So these are programs that offer the graduate assistantship, which gives you a full tuition waiver and annual living stipend. And the reason we started putting those in the database is because for me, early in my career, I didn't know about full funding. I applied to and got into a master's program that I paid for with student debt. Many years later, I got into a fully funded PhD and had no student debt. And so this information is really critical to making sure that you have, strong financial security as you're going through this journey, making sure you get as much funding as possible so you have as little student debt as possible. So if you've never used the ProFellow.com database, I'm going to encourage you after this workshop, create your free account. We do not share people's information with third parties. We're a social enterprise that is fully dedicated to helping people find funding for their career goals. We also have application tips, articles. We feature fellows from all different backgrounds. And if any of you are currently PPIA scholars or previously, we also have an international affairs network that you can be part of. It's a professional network of people who have won fellowships, and PPIA is one of those programs. Now, what I love to tell people is that negotiating your funding offers is not just possible, it's actually expected. So selection committees are expecting some portion of students are going to negotiate their funding. But the thing is, it's only the students that are in the know that do this. So it's actually most students do not negotiate their funding offers. They don't know that this is something that they can do. So they get their offers. Sometimes the offer is zero. You get the acceptance with no funding. So what I'm going to tell you today is that it's not only possible, it's expected. And just to prove to you that this is really a real thing, that I'm not just, this is not theory. I was recently featured in Business Insider. That's Reese Cowles. His mother actually booked a session with me so I could help him negotiate his funding offers for his PhD program. She didn't actually believe that this was possible. He went and he got an additional $52,000 in funding for his PhD. And this was actually from his best offer program. So it wasn't even from a second choice program. He went to his first choice program through which he got an acceptance, and he scored an additional $52,000 in funding just by asking. So I'm going to show you tactically how to do this today. And then his total funding package for his PhD was worth over $325,000 over 4 years. So 5 years. So he got the fellowship, he got a research assistant position, and he got a full tuition waiver. So you can see that this is a really valuable guidance on how do we get this funding. Now, if you haven't already in the chat, I was curious. I asked at the beginning if you could mention if you're at the beginning of this process, just starting, looking at schools and thinking about this and kind of just getting this information early, or if you are someone who's getting acceptances now and you're going to really be using this in the next week. And I'd love to see here. I might just take a look. So some people are saying, no worries here coming in. So hi guys, everyone's saying hi in the chat. And I'm going to actually move down to the beginning. So some people are saying at the beginning, so that's good. It's always good to get information early. You're going to be more prepared. Cassidy's at acceptances, great. Let's see. Missoon has one acceptance, but is going to restart from the beginning. It's all new. Wilfredo is applying to programs, waiting to hear back. So maybe you're still kind of waiting. You may hear soon or in the next month. All right, Florencia, great. So some people are here and some of you are just in the beginning. So all of you are in the right place. This is good to know. Now, I will mention that this process, for those of you who are just at the beginning of this, a key takeaway that I want you to know is that you will have a lot more leverage for negotiating funding if you have more than one acceptance. Now, it's not impossible to negotiate more funding if you only have one. It's not impossible. But I tell you this now because it's important to try to apply to at least 5 programs. This is what we mention in our course through ProFellow, is that applying to 5 to 6 programs is a good number or more if you have the capacity to do so, because the more acceptances you have, the more leverage that you have. So if you think that there's a couple of schools that you could get acceptances from, give it a try. If you only apply to 1 or 2 programs, even if you get into those programs, you sort of lose the leverage, right, for the negotiation. Because what we're going to do is show you how to use the other acceptances to really negotiate hard at your first choice school, first and foremost. Now, the agenda for this workshop is number 1, we're going to talk about when to begin negotiating your funding offers. 2, we're going to talk about all the benefits that can be negotiated. There's actually things beyond just money. 3, we'll talk about how to plan out the negotiations. 4, I'm going to show you an email template broken down part by part that you can follow to open the discussions with admissions. And 5, I'm also going to show you how to modify this particular email template to talk to those waitlist schools. Let's say your first choice school waitlisted you. So it kind of puts a little bit of a challenge in this negotiation process. We want to get that acceptance as soon as possible so they can be part of this process. So I'm going to talk about that as well. Now, there's 5 key steps to negotiating your funding offers. And I'd like to start this to say that fortune favors the bold. A lot of people just tell me, I'm just too nervous. I'm afraid to do this. But I want to encourage you guys to think of this as a professional and leadership development opportunity. Even if you think it's going to be unsuccessful, even if you're scared, I want to promise you that this is an opportunity to build skills that you will use later in your career. So even when you're negotiating your salary offers later in your career, when you're negotiating a promotion, when you're doing any type of negotiation, get as much practice in this as possible. It is always scary when you do this the first time, but I can assure you this is a really important skill that leaders learn how to do to be able to move up into their careers quickly and get more funding, more benefits, higher salary. Now, step number 1, I want to encourage all of you to rank your options independent of the funding offer. I do think it's important to have a good understanding of what is truly your first choice school. Let's say the funding offers were the same for all of the schools. Do you know which one is truly your first choice? Maybe you have some ties, but the reason this is important is that we're going to have slightly different language for the first choice schools than for the second, third, fourth, and other choice schools. So let's say you apply to a really top program, a Harvard, a Stanford, and you have a wait list or even an acceptance. We want to try to really get as much out of this offer as we can because that's the first choice school. So if you are someone with acceptances, just open up your notebook here, just put at the top, what's the first choice school for you, independent of the funding offer? Now, step number 2 is we want to research stipend offers. There's an amazing resource called phdstipends.com. This was actually developed by a friend of mine, Emily, and now I'm blanking on her last name. She actually developed this PhD stipend so that people could enter their stipends and their offers and really get a sense across it what people are being offered across schools, across departments, and even first year, second year, third year. You can also use this resource as a master's applicant because master's applicants also get funding offers, particularly in the form of graduate assistantships, which is giving you that stipend and the tuition waiver. So you can also kind of get a sense of what kind of stipends are graduate students in your program. What I'm going to do is hop out of here for a minute because I just want to show you the inside of PhDstipends.com. And if you've never used this, it's really awesome. So you'll see that there's, 15,000, there's almost 16,000 entries. You can enter your stipend now. And I would encourage you, put in your data here to help the broader community that's using this. And then let's skip to the data. So as you'll see in here, I think these are being entered by, the latest added. So you'll see that there's a lot of 2024, 2025 first year incoming students. So people are starting to add their stipends. So the pay here, that is the stipend level that they're talking about. Now, this is a little bit more geared toward PhD students. Many PhD students get a stipend for their 5 years. But again, if you might get a stipend as a master's student, especially in the more research-based programs, take a look here. And you can use, you can kind of toggle it by university. Some are blank. But if you wanted to, look by different universities, you can do that. I think you can also do this here. Let's try, what's one of the big policy schools? Let's try Duke. So Duke is there. You could just put in Duke. So you'll see that there. And then you can further toggle maybe by the department. So if we were to go down, let's say we go to public policy, which is probably going to be near here. Now, it's not a perfectly easily filterable, but let's see. Oh, I went past it. So let's see. Is the public policy department in here? PQ, or it might be under, Sanford School of Public Policy. So you'll see for a doctoral student, they're getting a stipend of $38,600. So as a master's student at Duke, if they do offer graduate assistantships, it may be at this level. And this person says RATA duties are required only after the first year, 2 summer fundings guarantees. So sometimes there's added things in here. Oh, here's another public policy one up here. So someone got 25,000, but another person got 38,600. So let's say you were the person that got 25,000. Now you can look in here and say, oh, wait a second. There's other people here getting 38,600. I have some room for negotiation, it seems. So that's why you want to take some time in here, even as a master's applicant, to see. So you want to look at the university, but you also want to look at the department. Within any one university, different departments have different levels of funding. The English department is going to be funded by a completely different source than the economics department versus the policy school versus the law school. So, you want to look in here. Again, this is more geared toward PhD students, but you can get some really good information here about a sense of what the stipends are. And sometimes in the notes too, you might see other types of benefits mentioned, health and dental insurance, for example. So, take note of that. You can look at all of your schools that you've applied to just to see what they're listing. You can also look at competitor schools. Even if there's schools that you didn't apply to, but you know that it's a major competitor to your first choice school, take a look at what they're offering their students. This is really a good information for you to get a sense. Just like if you went into a salary negotiation for a job, you always want to understand what is being offered across the industry for this particular program. So when you get a chance after this workshop, dig into this database a little more. And again, please contribute to it so that other people have information that you have. Your first offer might be, $25,000 a year stipend, and somebody could really benefit from that information. I'll go back here to the slideshow. All right. Now, next, we want to research all of the benefits. Now, not everybody puts the benefits into that PhDstipends.com. I would encourage you to go back to all of your choice schools and find out if there's any other types of benefits beyond just straight funding. So the funding that you usually get may be in the form of an internal fellowship, which in many cases is a no strings attached award that's usually merit-based. You may also get tuition discounts. Sometimes those are offered to all incoming students, kind of a tactic to just show, hey, we're giving some kind of discount. You could, like I said, you could also get an assistantship at both the doctoral and master's level. That is a job. So this is a 10 to 20 hour per week job where you're working, helping, supporting faculty with teaching and research, but it's a really valuable job that's going to give you the stipend for your hours of work, as well as the employment benefit of a tuition waiver. So I always tell students, make sure to see if your schools offer assistantships. But now there could be other benefits. Does your school have subsidized campus housing? Housing is usually the biggest chunk of the expenses that you're going to have as a student. So if they have housing that's cheaper than what you're going to find on the local market, definitely want to find that out and see if you can get your foot in the door, because they usually do not have housing for all graduate students. So, they never have a 100% housing rate. That's unheard of. So you want to see, how do I get to be the portion of students that get that subsidized housing? There could be additional scholarships that you can apply for. In some cases, this is more common at the doctoral level, but they might have relocation assistance. This can be more common for international students. There may be, for those of you that have children, there may be on-campus childcare or subsidies. Sometimes, especially some of the more technical programs, may offer a new laptop. That's common in engineering and some of the natural and physical sciences. There may be other types of travel subsidies or other benefits. Of course, health and dental insurance. So, find out, ask admissions, or if you want to just do your research without asking admissions yet, ask around to current students. Hopefully, some of you might have talked to some current students in the process of applying. See if you can find out just by looking around on the website, asking students, or, asking admissions directors is fine as well. Now, next, after we've done this research on what we could possibly negotiate for and sort of the ranges of stipends and things, next we want to outline the approach for each school. And I would encourage you to focus on your top choice school first and any ties for first. So if there's anyone that's a close second, think about that too. The approach for your first choice school is going to be different than the approach to the other schools. So the first school that you're going to talk to is the first choice school. We want to make sure that is out there, because this is a school that we're going to say, if you give me this, I will accept your offer. That's how strong the language has to be, right? So for that first choice school, now they may say no, but we need to be really clear with them. For the other choice schools, we don't want to make any kind of inauthentic claims that they're a first choice, because that can later kind of bite you in the butt if you do get a better offer from the actual first choice school. So we're going to use slightly different language that isn't as strong, because we want to be authentic and have integrity when we're speaking with admissions representatives. Now, as a step 5, we're going to prepare an email about your other offers if you have some. And I'm going to give you some options if you don't have other offers. But what I'm going to show in some following slides here is the email itself. So what we're doing in this step is we're going to work on this email. So the key part of this is letting admissions know about any other offers, even if the offers for your, are less than what you're getting for your first choice school. Maybe your first choice school gave you the best offer, but I'm still going to encourage you to negotiate for more funding from the first choice school. We're also going to use this maybe to negotiate off some wait lists and get those negotiations going. So we're going to start this email to talk about the offers. And within it, we're going to be really honest about what we need. Now, some people differ with me on this opinion, but I think it's important to ask them and be really explicit about what you need to accept the offer, specific numbers and benefits that you need, and then be prepared to accept the offer if they give you everything that they ask for. And this is because they do really need to know how serious you are to be able to move money around for you. Now, some schools are going to have are maybe completely unable to negotiate with you because they have no money left in the coffers. But also keep in mind, sometimes it will depend on the funding offers that they've sent to other students may be declined, which could free up some money. So, and also they may have some pot of discretionary funding that they can access for, to help students make these decisions. So keep in mind, the schools themselves are balancing, they have a very delicate balance of the total pot of money that they have, balancing the declines and acceptances that they're getting and figuring out what to do with the money that they've already offered out there, and money that's being declined. And, they have to, really do a careful dance in the same period of time that you're negotiating. So just be respectful. They're going to do the best that they can if you make this ask. So we're going to be really explicit so that they're not guessing, man, if we give them 5K more, will they take it? Let's be clear. And then finally, we should include in this email a deadline, because obviously all of this comes down to April 15, which is that US national deadline to accept a graduate school offer. Now, some schools may say, I really need to hear back from you before April 15. It's not really appropriate for schools to say that, because really there's kind of a gentleman's agreement that everyone is giving folks until April 15, which is kind of the agreed upon date nationally. So you can push back on those deadlines a little bit if you know that you can do that, right? So we're going to ask them to include a date, because you need all of the information on the table to make your final decisions. And for many students, it really does come down to who is going to give me the best funding offer, right? Because we're also calculating how much student debt are we going to have left. Now, finally, follow-up is super important. I can't tell you how many students say, I sent them an email and I heard nothing. And then I say, well, did you follow up? And they say, well, no. So keep in mind, email is easily can go to a spam box, a promotions box. It may not even reach the person. This is a very busy time of year for admissions directors. So if you send an email and you're not hearing back in a couple of days, please do follow up, even by phone if necessary, because you don't even know if they received your email, right? So let's make sure we're following up, because this is a really important time, and there's nothing inappropriate or too aggressive about following up. And I would say once you send out this email, depending also how much time you have, I mean, I would follow up within a few days. I wouldn't wait week, 2 weeks, because you really do need to hear back from them. All right, let's get into the email template. Pens ready. All right, so part one in this email, we're going to start with a note of gratitude, which is how we should always start an email. So you're going to ask your admissions contact, which may be the group, whoever the person or email box that sent you the offer letter, that would be the right email to send this back to. Or if you're at the doctoral level, you want to write to the department chair. Usually that's kind of the head of the admissions for doctoral programs. So you're going to say, thank you again for accepting me into, and then of course, insert the program. I'm ecstatic and humbled to be chosen for this competitive program and appreciate the time and consideration of the selection committee. Note, please word this in your own language. I don't want to have, 1,000 people out there saying humbled and, ecstatic, because, it might start to show. Use your own words, whatever words you would normally use to express gratitude. All right, so that's part one. Next paragraph, we're going to indicate where the program ranks for you. Now we're focusing on the first choice program to start. So you'll say something like, your program is my first choice among the programs I have been accepted to. I appreciate what the graduate program has to offer, including, and I'm just putting some ideas in here, renowned faculty, campus location. Put in here for what for you is true. What is the primary thing that really drew you to this program? There must be something about the format, the school's special programming, their prestige factor, whatever that is. And then, tell them that your program perfectly aligns with my criteria for selecting a graduate school. Now, when we start this for the other choice programs, we're going to use slightly different language. I'm going to show you what that is, but we're going to talk about first choice program first. So we're being really explicit. You are my first choice. I want to accept your offer. Now, in part three, this is the next paragraph, we're going to detail the other acceptances and offers. Now, this is why I mentioned in the beginning that if you have more than one offer on the table, it really helps you with leverage, even if the offer is less than the first choice school. So you're going to say, it has also been an honor for me to be accepted to several other graduate programs, including, and then list the explicit schools and the funding offer. So, I was accepted to University of Chicago with a fellowship of $10,000 and a graduate assistantship offering a full tuition waiver and an $18,000 stipend per year. I was also accepted to Duke University with a full tuition waiver and a $5,000 tuition discount. So make it really clear what you've been offered. And you can also put in here if you've been waitlisted. Let's say you got waitlisted at a really top school, Harvard, Stanford, put that in here as well. Now, in the next part, this is where we're going to make the ask. So they know we've been accepted. We want to be really specific. So this is why I wanted you to do your research in advance as to what you can ask for. So here we're going to write, I'm writing to ask if there is a possibility that the department could provide additional support to my funding package as it would aid in my decision to ultimately attend your graduate program. Would it be possible for the department to provide a funding package comparable to, now, if you have a better funding offer from another school, maybe it's a lower tier school, say make it comparable to that school to bring up the funding offer from the school. Maybe your first choice school didn't give you any funding, but you got a funding offer from another school. So this is where we're going to be making a big ask. Could you make it comparable to this second choice school that offered me this, right? Because we're trying to send the message that funding is really important. I really want to accept your offer, but I've got to have funding to make this decision. It's really hard to turn down a funded option, even though you're my first choice. Now, part 5, this is an optional section, but if you do have particular financial constraints, and most people do, this is where we want to include those in here. So put in here what is authentic to you. So if you have, for example, undergraduate student debt, you can talk about that. You could talk about expenses as an international student. Let's say you're unable to work, or you are relocating from a foreign country and have visa expenses, or just in general, the school's located in a high cost of living area, and just, a concern about being able to afford the cost of living without additional income. So work on this here. And this is where, we want to make it clear, this is why the funding offer is so important to us. Now, part 6 is where we're going to tell them what we're going to do if the request is met. Now, again, we're talking to the first choice school. So if they give you, again, you ask for something really specific. If they give it to you, what are you going to do? If you let them know that you would immediately accept the offer, they might say, okay, let's move this money around because we really want this student. This is, we accepted the student. We want to make sure they can get in here. Let's move. Hey, Joe, Sally, let's move some money around to make this happen, because they did say they're going to accept it. Because believe me, they want you to accept their offer. They may not be able to offer additional money. They literally may not be able to do it. But if they can, and they're going to try to move it around for you. So the language here goes like this: if a comparable funding package is possible, I would be honored to immediately accept this offer to complete my graduate studies. I'm happy to discuss this further with you if you need more information from me. It is my aim to be an involved and successful student, and will do whatever I can to pay it forward to the next class of candidates. Now, ending it with that point about how you hope to give back, this is a way to express too that you're not acting as if you're entitled to this money. You're not acting as if, this is all about you. I would like all of you to really sincerely think about how you want to give back to a school that could potentially fully fund your graduate studies. So, include this in here. I know that all of you would be active and successful students. That's needless to say, but it's good to really make that clear, because the tone of this letter is very, very important to making sure you have a successful negotiation. Now, part 7 is the gracious closing and the deadline. So also think about your deadline. You'll say, I'm aware that the department is working hard to distribute limited resources, and I would like to express my sincere gratitude for your time and consideration. I value your efforts. Because I'm under some time constraints to respond to my other offers, I would appreciate it if you could please let me know by, and put in a date. And don't be afraid to put in, a week's time or something if that's what you need, because we have to be clear how urgent this is, right? Especially if we're getting close to the, late March, early April timelines. Now, I want you to close it this way, really expressing gratitude and also acknowledging how much work that they're going to have to put into this, because again, they're balancing lots of different students, lots of different offers and declines. And so we should always take this from a point of humility to understand that if they read this email, they're going to be much more likely to be willing to move money around for you when you acknowledge how much work it is for them to do this. So this is just a really nice and beautiful way to close your letter. Now, I want to also propose some alternative language for the second choice programs. So what I would do is first and foremost, focus on that first choice program email. Let's say if you got accepted already. Now, if you haven't been accepted yet, if you're still waiting to hear from some schools back, I would give it another 1 to 2 weeks. Most people hear back by mid-March. It is still a little bit early in the year. Some people have gotten acceptances. There's still some things pending. And pending means you have not even heard about waitlist yet, right? You're just kind of, we don't know what the status is. You may want to wait a little bit, but I wouldn't wait too long. I would say don't wait till, I would start these conversations no later than mid-March, because there may be other students who have already started the negotiation process. So we want to make sure that we don't get too far behind the line of students that are going to be asking for it. So just something to keep in mind. So here's some alternative language for the second choice programs. Now, let's say this is a second choice program. We don't want to tell them that they're the first choice because they're not. And you may get a great offer from your first choice. So one way in that part 2, where the program ranks for you, you can say something like, I'm seriously considering accepting your, I meant to say offer there, and funding, acceptance and funding offer. I appreciate what the graduate program has to offer, including, right? So it's a little bit softer language. We're not telling them they're the first choice. Also for part 4, making the ask and being specific. Now, let's say, again, you didn't get other offers. If that is the case, let's say you only got one offer and we're going to try to negotiate, you're not going to have that section about, I've been honored to be accepted to the other programs. That part is out. But what you would do is still go into the negotiation, and it would go something like this. I'm writing to ask if there is a possibility that the department could provide me additional financial support. Would it be possible for the department to increase my stipend amount to, and put an amount that seems reasonable based on what you're seeing in PhD stipends, right? I wouldn't go above those amounts. Or offer, and put in a benefit. Let's say, there's some school systems that have set stipends and they cannot increase them. It has to be equal for all students. And if you did your research and figured that out in advance, you could also just ask for another benefit. So something like on-campus housing. Now, usually on-campus housing is not totally free. Usually it's subsidized, so it should be cheaper than the other, what you can get on the market, but you could put that in there. And then, you talk about that, and then you close it with a nice appreciation. So you could say, I would very much appreciate your consideration for any additional forms of financial or program support, as this is a major decision for me and my family, if you have a partner and kids. A particular financial constraint that I have is, and then talk about your situation. So again, if we're trying to ask for money from the only offer that you have, this is a nice way to do it, being really explicit, letting them know that the funding is very important, it's a major decision, and you have other financial constraints. Now, also what to do if the request is met. Now, we have to be a little careful here with the second and third choice schools, because we really want the offer from the first choice school, right? That's the one we're hoping to get. So let's just be, have integrity and just be clear that you're not promising to accept the offer, but you can say, if a comparable funding package is possible, I would be honored to consider this offer to complete my graduate studies, right? There's no promise here, but we're just saying, we'd be honored to have this option on the table. Now, again, if it's your only choice program and they meet that, I would put in the very explicit, yes, I will accept this offer, right? If you don't have any other offers on the table, unless you say, man, this is so far off what I can financially afford, you want to use this language instead. Let's say it's an $80,000 a year program and they only gave you $10K toward your tuition. I mean, you may need to tell them, I need at least 50% of my tuition met. And if they can't do that, you may say, I might defer for a year or try to apply to other programs that are actually fully funded, which you can find in the ProFellow database. So think about that too, what language you want to use. Now, even if you said, I will accept this offer, I mean, nothing is set in stone until you actually officially sign, the paperwork and put down deposits. So, don't freak out if you said you would accept it if it was met and then you change your mind. But I do say, let's try to be as, respectful and have as much integrity as possible as we go into this process. Now, for the wait list, so wait lists are always like a little bit, so the wait list acceptance is a conditional acceptance that is dependent on a spot being open after they have received declines from their first round selection of candidates. So that means you are not in the first round selection. It essentially means they're sending out acceptances to an initial group, and then they're going to wait to see what the response is before giving you an acceptance offer, right? So this kind of stretches out the timeline a little bit. So it can complicate the negotiation process. I think the goal is that if your first choice school says you're on the wait list, we want to, try to see if they can let us know, beforehand, right? So a wait list is a good sign. I mean, that basically means usually these schools are accepting only the top 5 to 10% of their applicants. If you're on a wait list, you're probably somewhere between the top 10 to 15% of applicants, right? So you're still very, very high on their list. But it's a little bit tricky because they can't offer that many spots. So for the wait list for the first choice school, you could say, thank you very much for selecting me for the wait list for the program. I'm ecstatic and humbled to be chosen for the wait list to this competitive program and appreciate the time and consideration of the selection committee. Your program is my first choice among the programs I applied to. I appreciate what the graduate program has to offer, and you can tell them why it is your first choice. And then if you did have other offers, this is where we want to ask them, tell them about the other acceptances. This is something I like to call a zing factor in my program. So again, this only really works if you do have acceptances to other schools. It's a little hard to do this if you're on a wait list for one school and there's no other acceptances. I mean, you really don't have any leverage to write this email. But if you have been accepted, even if it's just to one other school, this is where we're going to put it in. And then the goal of this is to try to get them to maybe get you off the wait list beforehand. Now, two things could happen. Either when you're going to be accepted off the wait list, or you don't. Sometimes they tell you, we're going to let you know by March 20th if you're off the wait list. A lot of times it's kind of up in the air. So you're going to use one of these two languages. So you're going to say, because I'm under a time constraint to accept one of these offers or accept this offer, I'm writing to kindly ask when I might hear from the admissions office if I'm accepted off the wait list. So that's in the case that you don't know. Alternative language would be, I'm kindly writing to ask if I could receive consideration for acceptance from the wait list by X date. Basically saying, I recognize this is earlier than the school has committed to, but I would appreciate your consideration of this request. Now, they might not be able legally to do this. They might have constraints, and they will probably write back and say, no, unfortunately, we can't let you know before then. But I know that some schools have a little bit of wiggle room. And for the small number of you that have the courage to make this ask, they may get you off the wait list sooner. Now, keep in mind, this can also, result in a non-acceptance. Some people do not make it off the wait list. And that means the first choice round, they got enough attrition from that round. That means, they might have, let's say they sent out 10 offers and 8 of those people accepted, and they wanted to enroll 8 students. There's no more spots, right? So it really depends. So this is just a way, but some other schools might have some wiggle room. For example, they might have already heard back from 50% of the students, and they might have some wiggle room. We don't know. This is a big what if. We're not sure, but we're making the ask because it helps us feel like we're doing something to hear back from this first choice school. And again, you should let them know if you're accepted and offered a comparable funding package, I will immediately accept the offer. So letting them know that if you get me off the wait list and give me the funding, I'll take it. Now, just remember, don't fear negotiating. I know this is scary. The good thing is, though, is that you're doing this over email. So it's not, you don't have to go into, usually with salary negotiations with jobs, you're either doing it over the phone or in meetings, and it is very, very nerve-wracking. We're always afraid that, it's going to go haywire. But keep in mind, you have an acceptance. No one is going to take away the acceptance because you're trying to negotiate funding. The absolute worst that they can happen is say, no, I'm sorry, we don't have any funding that we can offer you, or no, we can't increase your stipend. The point is that you won't receive more if you don't ask. And if you make your ask with gratitude, humility, and sincerity, the worst that can happen is that they'll say, no, I'm so sorry. We'd love to have you, but we really can't do this. They're not going to be upset that you asked. They're not going to withdraw your acceptance. because you're doing this with such a deep appreciation for who they are and what they're offering. So just keep that in mind. I think I'm at, oh, my final advice, how they respond is informative. I will say that a school or admissions directors that respond, if you write them this beautiful email full of gratitude, respect, and humility, if they respond in a sharp or kind of, dismissive way, keep note of that because that may be reflective of how you're going to experience this program. I wouldn't say they do that often, but if they're immediately dismissive of the negotiation, I would think on that a little bit because I think that's responsive. The groups though that do say, yes, we're going to get back to you. If these groups come back to you with an amazing funding offer, they up it, they give you more benefits. That means they went to bat behind the scenes to get you that offer. And to me, that's a signal that they really want you in this program. And this is going to be a supportive and inclusive program, right? That really sends the signal that this is the place to be. So keep that in mind. I mean, the really, really competitive schools, they are in a position where they have thousands of students who want to go there. And then there's other schools, that who are less competitive, but they're going to give you a more welcoming and responsive student experience. So, just think about that. All right, I'm at the point of questions and yeah, I'd love to get started on some questions.
I
Awesome.
have a question. Oh, sorry, was I supposed to raise my hand?
Oh, if you can put it in the chat, we'll go.
Oh, crap.
Yeah, no worries.
It's like,
Well, thank you so much for that awesome presentation. I love everything that you were saying in here, and I think I really enjoy the last part that you mentioned about kind of culture, right? And how that response is given back to you, right? Being an indicator, right? Because not only are we looking to get into the best programs, but we also are looking to get into programs that are going to give us the access and the belonging, right, that we deserve as
yes.
applicants. And right, like I love that this demystifies and kind of like opens it up to the resources and the toolkits that we can use to find our best fit academic home, right? And in a way that kind of takes out that gatekeeping that around this process that might have existed previously. I really love that this is something that we're talking more and more about because when I applied to policy school, I had no idea that I could negotiate my offer. And then when I was an admissions officer, right, and a DEI officer at a policy school, right, seeing how students were doing this and also empowering those that were applying to do this as well, right, was something that I love that we were able to like let students know, like, no, like you deserve this opportunity, and the worst that somebody can say is no, right?
Well, Esteban, if you had gotten this email an admissions officer, how would you have felt?
I would have felt great because I think the way that you frame this is key, right? I think so many times it's easy, right, when you put so much effort into an application process to get frustrated or to get angry, right?
Yes.
And to want to maybe write your first draft email and send that out to an admissions officer, right? And I think you might get back the energy that you put out there, right? So really thinking about what is it that I need and knowing that these are people with jobs that are trying to do their best to provide this access and belonging, but there are some constraints at play and really understanding that and coming at this from a place of compassion, right, is key, right? And it might be a sign too that if maybe you're not getting what you were expecting, to take a year or two off and to apply for
Mhm.
other fellowships or to, find ways to increase the merit of your application or how you're framing, right, your application, right? Because not everybody goes right first round into their admissions right program. I know friends that have applied to medical school 3 years in a row and didn't get accepted until their fourth year, or maybe didn't get into their top choice policy school or law school and decided like, hey, I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to do something that's actually going to maybe put me at the par of other students, right? And also I think this is key around culture too. a lot of students, a lot of schools, right, might have differing perspectives on like what makes a great applicant to their program. Some schools are more willing to take people straight out of undergrad. More schools might be looking for students that have work experience so they can come in
Mhm.
with that lived experience to talk about in the classroom, right? And so another part about what you said about really showing that you've done your research of the school and incorporating that to that letter, um, I think is also really key. So in order to maybe go into these questions, I have a couple here. Um, we have a question that says, "Hey, if you've already accepted the offer, can you still negotiate the funding?"
Hmm. I think it's possible, because if if you said I've accepted it, I mean, some people still pull out of things that they've accepted because some people, I have students in my program that they're like, I really want to accept this right now, but they haven't heard back from all the schools yet. And I say, take your time with this. Take your time. This is a big life decision. It's going to put you on a trajectory. And I know it's like the light is at the end of the tunnel, but take your time. You should have until April 15th to accept offers. So don't jump the gun. I know we really want to tell mom, dad, everybody that we've gotten into these schools. And you can tell people about your offers. But if you've been accepted, give it a try. You never know. But they're going to they may wonder, like, wait, you've already accepted and now you're asking for more funding. But what you could do, one thing a lot of students don't know about is that graduate assistantships are really primary vehicle for funding. And often at the master's level, you don't get assistantships just guaranteed at acceptance the way you might see at the doctoral level. So if you're a master's student, if you didn't get any funding or it's limited, I mean, the next question, even if you've already accepted the offer, ask them about graduate assistantships. Can I apply to graduate assistantships? If yes, how can I go about that process? Because often these assistantships too, because they're jobs, they kind of open up at all different times of year. So they may say, well, we're going to have a better sense of what assistantships are available in July, right, for the fall semester or even spring semester. So then you're like, okay, I might have a funding vehicle through an assistantship. I need to get ready so I can apply to these things. And remember, they're like jobs. So it's just as important to have a good, strong application for the assistantship. So it's not impossible. So I always say, why not ask, right? What's the worst that can happen? They can say no. They're not going to rescind the offer, so yeah.
Love
Do
it.
you feel confident you could like modify these templates to kind of work in that way? I mean, I think you can.
Definitely.
So yeah.
Another question that came up in the chat, was let's say you've not been accepted or waitlisted, but you've been declined to one of your top choice schools. Could a modification of this email help there, or should we respect those decisions as final?
I don't think you can get in after a decline. That's not really heard of. And Esteban, you might know better than me, but did that ever happen in your case? I don't think they can technically do that. Although
I
you could reapply. You could definitely reapply for the next round.
definitely. I think, the application is that first kind of opportunity to introduce yourself to a program, right? And it might be that a student needs to reassess, right, how they're framing, right, their application. And so I know that you do another amazing seminar on, right, the best tips for an application that we brought you in for, I think, over the fall. And so
Yes.
that might be another opportunity for us to offer those students in the future. Um, let's see. We have some other questions. Sorry, one second. Is negotiating a living stipend difficult when you've already been offered full tuition and fees?
No, but I will say that the stipend is usually almost always associated with an assistantship. So just be aware it's part of a job on campus. So these assistantships, often they call them research assistantships. You might see RA or teaching assistantship. So the expectation is that you're going to be supporting the university and the faculty about it's anywhere from 10 to 20 hours per week might be the whole year or just spring, summer semesters. And so the stipend is part of the job. So if you got your tuition waived, that might have been just a straight up fellowship or merit-based type of award. But if you want to get a stipend on top of it, you'll need to explore if they offer assistantships and how you can apply for those. So like I said, they're a lot less common at the master's level. And also they're less common in professional degree programs. So like the MPA programs, you don't see them as often as you would in like a research-based master of public policy program that has these assistantships. So this is something to ask. I would ask now about assistantships and the stipend.
Definitely. I think another question that popped up here that I think is really great is, let's say a school is asking for proof of your other offers. What's your take on providing that proof, or is that another indicator of what the culture of that institution might be?
What would they need proof of? You mean proof in the negotiation process, or like after
So
you started, or do you mean like to?
let's say you got a certain funding package from X university, and the university that you're negotiating with asks to maybe see that. Um,
I mean, well, hopefully you haven't fudged what you've been offered. So this is why it's always critically important that you be honest. But if you have that offer on, it should be in a written document. So I would share it with them. I mean, I don't think there's any reason not to. They may be doing this because, I do a lot of talking about negotiation out in the ProFellow world, and now other groups are talking about it. And I think there are some students that are probably not working in integrity and just saying that they have offers that they don't. And so there may be some schools, if they've been subject to that kind of behavior, they want proof. So that's why we should always be 100% honest. And I would just share the offers if you should have them on paper. So
yep.
this is a good point not to make it up or estimate it.
I've seen this play out in a really interesting way. When I was in the admissions world, we had offered a student fellowship and later learned that a portion of their application was not truthful, right? And
Oh,
so,
see,
and later, because one of their professors reached out to us. And so we ended up rescinding the offer because, if you're looking to go into a space like public policy, public administration, global policy, international affairs, right? These are jobs that lead to public service, and these are
Mhm.
jobs that require the utmost integrity, right? And so if I think one of the key things I just want to uplift from your presentation today is that honesty and integrity are key, right? Because
100%.
reflection of who you are as a person and the brand that you're putting out there, and also what kind of alumni of the institution you might be.
I mean, even it's subjective things like what's a first choice, what's a second choice, don't tell all the schools they're your first choice, because then if you have to, if they meet your requests and then you decline, it may burn that bridge. I mean, I just say, just use the language that is truly reflective of the truth.
Definitely, definitely. Well, we are coming up on the hour. I wanted to see if anyone has any last questions, if they could repost those in the chat, and we'll see if there's one or two more that we can get in here. Um, have you heard of schools that explicitly say that they don't negotiate? And is there and let's say you really want to attend that institution, should you try to maybe push there, or should you also accept that as final?
I would say, I wouldn't, it's probably not unheard of. There may be schools that say, for example, there are some schools who will not negotiate the stipend because they have legal rules like everyone has to have this stipend level and there's no increase. So they may just mean like, yeah, this is not negotiable, the stipend. But I would say first, before you start negotiation, see what if you should see that language explicitly. If somehow you miss this language, they'll tell you we can't negotiate. So just make sure you're reading your offer letter and it doesn't say that. Make sure you read the admissions website and it doesn't say that, and then you can feel confident. But I wouldn't worry. I mean, if you missed the fine print, don't worry, they will tell you. But you're asking kindly, so don't worry, about a snarky response. They should be kind about it.
Definitely, definitely. Well, any final thoughts, Vicki? I'm so happy that you were able to join us today, and I wanted to see if there's anything else that you wanted to close out with.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to tell everyone, be sure to check out the ProFellow resources. I mean, funding is a really big factor. This is a time of year that I get a lot of emails from students like, I got into Columbia or some other school and didn't get any funding.
Yeah,
And,
wait a minute.
oops, let me just mute that person.
Yeah.
Or if you can, maybe. If you have an offer from
Okay.
a top choice school with absolutely no funding, just remember that I would emotions are high and you may feel like I got to take this no matter how much it costs, but please, please, please keep in mind, if you got into a top choice school with no funding, it means you can get into another top choice school with funding. And at ProFellow, we have this huge database of fully funded programs. I would encourage you to apply everything that you've learned in this past year about applying to competitive programs, with the support of PPIA, and try it again. Defer for a year and make sure that you get a good funding package, because there's nothing worse than coming out of grad school with 80, 100, $250,000 student debt, because you won't be able to go into your public service career. You're going to be in a serious situation. This is my words of wisdom. I have
Yeah.
many students who have done this, just deferred and made sure they got into a funded program.
Definitely. I mean, I graduated undergrad with like $70,000 in undergraduate debt.
Yeah,
And
it's a lot.
when I was thinking about graduate school, right, I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to go to a graduate school that's going to, be able to ensure that I'm not going to, right? I know I want to work in public service. I can take part in the public service loan forgiveness program, but I also want to ensure that, let's say, if things change, that I want to set myself up for success. And I know that the next generation of change makers is being very thoughtful about the student debt crisis, right? And what this might mean for, what kind of impact they could have long term. And especially if you're coming from a background that hasn't historically had access, right? And maybe you're coming from a background that hasn't had the financial resources. It can be hard. And so these are very, I think, personal but also tough questions to be asking yourself, and especially as you figure out where to go for the next step in the journey. I did have one last question, and the question was, a lot of the people on the call today are PPIA Junior Summer Institute fellows. So they've already been through a very prestigious fellowship program that helps them boost the merit of their application.
Mhm.
Would it be advisable to maybe put that into the template and to remind them of just like the fellowships that they've had already and how it boosts the caliber of their application and maybe the values that they bring to this to a program?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think, doesn't PPIA, don't you get a little bit of money toward the school as part of being a PPIA scholar?
Yeah, so being a PPIA fellow, if you've gone through this Junior Summer Institute, you get fee waivers to
Mhm.
graduate schools that you apply to in the consortium, and then all your there is a minimum of funding that you're guaranteed, but most of our students go on to get much higher funding packages because of the merit of their applications and because of the graduate school preparatory instruction that they receive as part of the fellowship.
Yeah, I would mention it like this. So, of course, programs love if you're bringing your own funding from outside sources. So even if it's a small amount, so I think in the letter you can mention, I'm pleased to let you know that because I was a PPIA scholar, I'm also going to be able to apply toward my tuition the X amount of money from the program. And so what I'm asking for is more help meeting the deficit. So that kind of inserts it in there and saying, look, I've worked hard to like get my own funding from all these outside sources, but I need help meeting the deficit of funding, right? So I would insert it that way, and that kind of adds it in there.
Definitely. And if you're looking for more outside funding opportunities, right, to help meet those gaps, ProFellow, your website.
ProFellow has lots. Just remember though, for fellowships, you have to apply pretty far in advance. So if you didn't apply to any other fellowships this past fall for your first year of funding, a lot of the deadlines have already passed. But again, this is another thing where it's like, man, I got into top school. If I could defer it for 1 year and then apply for some of those big fellowships that usually have September, October, November deadlines, like Paul and Daisy Soros Foundation, the Foreign Affairs IT Fellowship. There's so many, but you have to apply to them almost before you're applying to graduate school. So this is why people miss them.
Definitely. Thank you again. Oh my gosh.
Thank
So
you. Thank you for having me.
I have a few
Friend-
questions in the chat. I was
We're gonna-
kicked out of the meeting, so I guess that's why you haven't seen them.
Oh, no worries. Well, we will have to well, actually, Vicky, do you have time for one more question?
Sure. Yeah. Let's do one more.
Cool.
I think I saw your question in the chat. Do you want me to just hop to that one, what you said there?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. And you asked, should I start the negotiation before or after the campus visits? Once I have an accepted an offer, do I immediately decline? And finally, could you send us a PDF? Okay, so for if you're doing campus visits, this is more common at doctoral levels. But if you're doing master's level, it's unlikely that you're going to be doing negotiation during your campus visit, which is really, I think, more meant to kind of show you around, meet some students, kind of get a better sense. I would probably do this before because this might by email, because this might be something that you then could talk about a bit further with the admissions directors, but you don't want to spring it on them in like a verbal meeting because they're not going to remember what you said or what you need. So I would still do this by email. And then in terms of once you've accepted, do you decline? I mean, I think you have up until April 15 typically to decline. So you could, or you could just wait till April 15 if you think, something's going to happen. But usually once you've accepted, if you're certain, then just go. And then, yeah, Esteban, I'll send you a copy of this presentation. I just ask that people not post it in public places since this is a special workshop for PPIA, but just use it for your own individual use. Esteban, you're welcome to send that out to folks as long as no public posting of it.
Sounds great. Thank you again. Oh my gosh, a friend of PPIA, Dr. Vicki
It's
Johnson.
so fun. I hope I'll see you guys in July too, which would be great.
Vicki will be doing some programming for us at our Summer Expo in July for our current Junior Summer Institute fellows. So we're super excited to have her. Well, Vicki, thank you again. I hope everyone had a great time today, and we look forward to having our next workshop with how to apply for government jobs using USA Jobs presented by the Government Accountability Office as our next opportunity. And so just keep a lookout for that. And we'll see you all very, very soon. Have a great one. Bye.